Done up like a kipper is the headline on The Sun. I wonder if the political editor of the New European, James Ball, agrees with any of those words. Very good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I'm guessing you were one of the people celebrating yesterday. A nice glass of, obviously, French champagne, certainly not English sparkling wine, to celebrate basically heading us back into the EU. That's pretty much what happened yesterday, isn't it?
I mean, honestly, I'm happy enough with this deal, but I feel like I should be on here sort of shouting outrage and betrayal, and the Brexiteers should be delighted.
Huh?
This makes it less likely we go in because it fixes a whole bunch of the running issues that came up by Brexit that people like me could point to. Queues at the border, the inability to export. You know, if you want to talk fishermen, the fact you couldn't sell the catches because the export rules and the food safety checks caused so many problems. This gets rid of those issues. It settles things at least until the next election, but for a decade. Like, I don't love this deal. I liked being in the EU.
You thought you want to go further.
A lot of practical problems go away.
It doesn't solve passport queues. There was nothing in the Brexit deal that required any EU country to put us in a different queue. Interestingly, of course, lots of countries didn't. I mean, Portugal, for instance, it's different at different airports. Nothing in this deal that would actually change that. Just the EU won't be telling people, oh, you ought to do that. Inability to export. Plenty of our businesses have been able to continue their exports to the EU since Brexit. There hasn't been an issue. I'm just not quite. I'd say that's a little bit of should we say, over-egging the pudding, I think, a little bit there, James.
I will cheerfully admit that the government over-egged the pudding, like every government does with every deal. The passport gates one really annoyed me. I used the e-gates last week. I mean, they're talking nonsense there. But
you said that was one of the issues.
Our farmers were I did not cite the e-gates. I would not dare. The farmers and food have found it very hard to export. That's been a big problem. That's a sector that's suffered enough. It's not one that Labour plays very well with, but it is welcome.
But whose fault was that?
And if you look, the food sector
that wasn't a fault of Brexit. That was a decision by the EU to make life more difficult. Lots of things, for instance, us allowing EU passengers, for instance, to use our e-gates and not being tit for tat petty. You know perfectly well a lot of the downsides of Brexit, such as they exist, because I believe national sovereignty and democratic accountability trump any issues on that front. A lot of those problems are simply created by petty Brussels bureaucrats who wanted to punish us for leaving the club, because no country can be allowed to leave because the club is so great, you mustn't allow anyone to leave it.
I mean, I'm going to shock you here, Julia, right? I don't actually have the EU constitution tattooed to my forehead, and I don't wake up every morning to ode to joy.
Are you sure? I bet if we move that camera, there'll be an EU flag, those yellow stars glinting at me.
No, I mean, I genuinely, I rather dislike the EU and the way it operates. But I also take the view that if you have a big protectionist club that bullies all the people outside of it, that borders you on every side and is the world's biggest trading bloc and trading partner, you're better being inside it than just outside it.
You're better to be the bully, not be bullied.
I mean, frankly, yes. I mean, this is what we've seen. I'm a very pragmatic.
I mean, put that on a poster and sell that to the British people. Doesn't that tell you everything, though?
Honestly, Julia, I think if we'd put that in a poster in 2016, we might not have left the EU.
Can I say the amount of times Ramonas have told me all the reasons why we wouldn't have left the EU. People voted to leave the EU because they wanted to, quote, take back control, not because of what was written on the side of a big red bus. Do you think Keir Starmer thinks that he can basically take us back under the auspices of the European Court of Justice over food and agricultural products and the standards, and take us back, into this carbon emissions scheme, and even the possibility of youth-free movement? They're going to call it a youth scheme or youth experience scheme, but call it what you want. It's going to be young people from other European countries with higher unemployment rates coming to this country, competing with our young people for jobs. Do you think that he think that we're just all a bit too stupid and we're not going to notice?
I honestly don't think he does. I think this is Keir Starmer in his real arch-pragmatist, sort of boring, plodding way, trying just to get a working trading relationship with Europe that we don't have to revisit and turn into a psychodrama all the time. I think he's sick of all of this done like a kipper stuff. I would love a deal that was sneaking us back into the EU. I'd quite like us to rejoin the customs union. This sort of youth movement, It's very popular. It polls brilliantly. People are generally quite pro-European youth movement, but as I understand it, we're going to cap it. We're going to have capped numbers of visas. Yeah. Oh, honestly, it's one of the odd ones. People dislike immigration in general. They want the numbers to come down. Talk about youth movement or things like Erasmus and explain them. They poll gloriously. I've never understood why, but they do. People
But Erasmus is about students. I mean, again, another benefit for the EU, because the EU doesn't have any top 50 universities. We, of course, do have 5 of the top 50 universities. EU doesn't have any. I mean, there's a reason why they want to come here, isn't there?
I mean, they would love the home fees. And if Starmer conceded on that, I would be extremely surprised. And I think there would be a big backlash. The deal doesn't do that. One good thing it does is we are still outside the EU for lots of bits of regulation. The UK actually has the best AI industry outside of the US. We don't train models here, but that's cheap data center work. We have a load of the very skilled AI jobs here. We can do that. We have a big energy sort of cooperation with the EU. We need that. We've not.
Well, no, we need that because of net zero policies. But now we won't be able to get out of any net zero policies because the carbon emissions trading scheme.
In nuclear.
We haven't invested in any industry properly. But that's the point. But again, I don't think tying ourselves to the EU, where you've got Germany's economy is in a terrible state because of their net zero policy. Many other countries as well. I'm not quite sure that's the solution. Can I come back to the fishing issue, because that's the one that's very, very clear cut for people, isn't it? I know I'm sure you don't know anyone working in the fishing industry. I certainly don't live on a coastal town that's dependent on it. But it's a very visceral reaction for people who are born on an island nation. We can look at a map. We can see we've got our own fishing area. You know, for some reason, we thought we'd leave it in the hands of the EU, the French and the Spanish trawlermen for quite a few years as part of the deal to get out, which Boris Johnson signed. And now we're looking at, apparently we were going to roll it over by another year and then 4 years. Now it's 12 years. Why on earth would we give up our rights to our own waters to the French and the Spanish fishermen? What did we get in return for that?
I actually used to cover fishing. I used to work at the grocer. I covered food manufacture. So, I mean, look, it's a romantic notion and we have towns that rely on it and no one wants to lose jobs. But there are 6,500 full-time fishermen. If you want a comparison for that, there's about 11,000 yoga instructors and about 7,000 tattooists.
Yeah, but the difference is
it's part of our romantic national image.
No, the fishermen actually do a useful job. The reason why we have so few is because we gave away rights to our waters to the EU.
I mean, we don't. It's not.
We literally did and have just done again.
Economy. It hasn't been for decades. It is
because we've been in the EU for decades.
The future of Britain is not fishing. I mean, the future of Iceland is barely fishing, and it's about 20% of their economy. Like it is ridiculous that it's had 10 times the airtime of energy.
No one is pretending this is the future.
We are an advanced, modern industrial economy.
And that's
fishing
fine.
is a fraction of a fraction.
But we still need food, and it's part of our food industry.
Good for fishing because the fish that our trawlermen dig up are not the fish that we most like to eat. Dig up, fish up. Terrible. Yeah, you can tell I'm a real expert here. But the fish that they collect are not the ones we like to eat. Most British caught fish are sold in Europe. And the checks on the border were causing absolute
But that doesn't
chaos.
mean you have to give up our fishing rights to the French. Can I just ask you, just finally, because time's against us, do you think this is all part of a cunning wheeze by Mr Ramona-in-Chief Keir Starmer, who tried to stop Brexit from happening in the first place from 2016 to 2019, had to give up because Labour lost that election then, that this is a secret cunning plan to take us back in by hook or by crook, by stealth?
I'd love a secret plan to get us back in there. I do not think this is part of one. I think you have the weird world now where the only people that take Brexit seriously are Remainers. Brexit, it's turned into I don't know what I want, but I don't want this. This deal's terrible. The India deal's terrible. The USA deal's terrible. Whatever happens is a betrayal because there was no Brexit that Brexiteers agreed on. They had 9 years in power. Like there's been a long time to come up with something for Brexit, and it's actually taken a Remainer to come along and find a working deal that keeps out of the EU but trading with it.
The mischaracterisation of Brexiteers by Remainers is always absolutely flabbergasting. Still never met a single person who voted for Brexit who doesn't think it was the greatest vote they've ever cast in their lifetime and the right thing to do and will remain right until the end of time. But there we are. What do I know? I'm just a Brexiteer. James Ball, not a Democrat, that, but he is a political editor of the New European. Thank you so much for joining us.